So, good evening and welcome to December's Cabinet meeting. Colleagues, there are no planned fire practices, so if it does go off, it is for real. So please follow staff out of the building, and the assembly room is to the rear of the building opposite Tesco's. Can I encourage colleagues to make sure that any mobile devices are either off or on silent? This is being live streamed, and colleagues, some members may be able to join and interact, but also it's on YouTube as well, to be able to view at your own pleasure. So the item in respect of Preston and Painted Seafront Master Plan, that has been withdrawn for further works to be undertaken on them, and that will not be considered this evening. Our plan is to bring that to our January Cabinet meeting. So apologies, Lisa. Do we have any apologies?
Chairman, I have an apology from Councillor Stockman.
Thank you. And then as far as... So I'll just go for the... I'm going to propose the minutes of the last Cabinet meeting. Councillor Cowell, I understand you may wish to second.
Happy to second.
I will propose those, so those please vote in favour.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Right, so declarations of interest. Do any elected members or officers have any pecuniary or non-pecuniary declarations of interest?
Nobody's indicated, Chair.
Thank you. And as we have a good amount of interest on item 11 to do with climate change this evening, I will vary the order of business and bring that forward as our next item on this agenda. So Councillor Morey, would you be kind enough to propose the item that is before us?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We believe that a range of actions to tackle climate change are most effective if delivered at a county level. These include projects to support the decarbonisation of housing, transport, business sector, and in bidding for government funding. There is also an additional capacity at Devon level that can support climate action locally in Torquay. Torquay has therefore been working with the Devon Climate Emergency Partnership to oversee the development of the Devon Carbon Plan. The plan sets out the ambition to tackle climate change across all of Devon, including those people who live, work in and visit our county, and those businesses who are based or operate there. The planning is the roadmap for how Devon will reach net zero emissions by 2050 at the latest, with an interim target of 50% reduction by 2030, and how each partner organisation can help to achieve this. It devised action to reduce Devon's emissions to five sectors: economy, resources, energy supply, food, land and sea, transport, and the built environment. According to the Devon plan, the benefits will also filter down to Torquay, as I said before, and help it thrive. It is a scientific evidence-led plan which forms a roadmap for how Devon can achieve net zero carbon by 2050 at the latest. It addresses the climate and ecological emergency, which is an opportunity to create fairer, healthier, more resilient and more prosperous society. Those most affected by climate change need more of a say in how we respond, and policy makers' actions to mitigate climate change must be aligned with goals for public health improvement, green growth, and also the reduction of social vulnerability. The Devon Carbon Plan encourages everyone to be more active by walking and cycling, improving air quality through the electrification of vehicles, insulation of our homes to make them warmer, and eating more balanced diets will all improve public health and reduce pressures on the National Health Service. Chairman, with that in mind, I would like to move the recommendation as seen on page 459.
Thank you, Mike. And I would like, from the chair, I'd like to second the report before us. Whether climate change is happening or not, and the jury clearly is stating with the vast majority of experts that it is happening, there is an issue here. The reality is that we don't have many worlds to inhabit, and so to make sure that we have got using our resources to best effect throughout the world and to actually tackle world poverty, then this is essential. Sorry, can we please, look, if you wanted to speak at this meeting, you have every right to request this. I don't think it's appropriate that people shout others down. So please do engage appropriately. So it's been proposed and seconded. Do we have anyone who wishes to comment from around the table before we go to other elected members within the room? I'm asking for elected members to come forward, Lisa. Are there any other elected members, Lisa?
There's nobody around the table, Chair.
Right. And then, as far as any other elected members from within the room wanting to comment?
Councillor David Thomas.
Thank you. Councillor Dave Thomas, do you want to come in?
Thank you very much. Councillor Morey started his statement with that he believes that a range of actions are better taken at a county level. We know that Devon County are looking at 2050, so I guess my first question would be, with Torquay wanting to be part of this Devon programme, but to have completed zero carbon by 2030, Devon are only expected to get to 50% by 2030, but Torquay 100% by 2030. So what's the difference, and how can you be part of one plan but have a different set of ambitions? And the second part of the question, which I think is the most important part for me, is the climate change was declared by this administration in June 2019. 2030 from 2019 is 11 years. We're currently 2022, so we are 25% the way through the plan. So looking at zero carbon, 75% through the way to go, how much carbon have we actually achieved in savings at 25% on our journey, please?
So, Mike, do you want to reflect on that? And then if David Edmondson wants to come in, and also I think there's a lady called Emily Reid from Devon County who's online who may wish to reflect as well. So, Mike.
Yes, briefly on the dates, the 2050 and 2030, not at odds. As I said, it was county saying it is at the latest rather, 2050. We're saying that 30 is challenging, but doable. So we're sticking to that at the present time.
The only way we'll get net zero is if we don't drive our cars, if we don't... Excuse me. Sorry. How are you going to get net zero? How are you...
Can you please... I'm sorry. I'm going to adjourn the meeting now.
You're a civil servant. You work for us.
No, we are elected officials.
Sorry, I'm adjourning the meeting now. Right, colleagues, can we please leave the meeting now? So, I adjourn the meeting there to try and calm things down. We're keen to carry on with the meeting this evening with members of the public in the room, but really we need to ensure that we're able to conduct this without people being shouted over. So please, do not intervene during the meeting, because people do have an opportunity to engage appropriately if you're given appropriate notice. I'm keen to continue with the meeting. So I think at the moment we were with you, Mike, and then we were going to go to David Edmondson. Just to be crystal clear though, if there are any interruptions, then we will have to adjourn the meeting again, and we will remove anybody who is actually disrupting the meeting. And I don't want to do that at all. That's not where I want to be, but I'd much sooner that we were open and transparent and conducted the meeting in front of people. So, Mike, over to you.
Just to reiterate what I said to Councillor Thomas, the issue about the difference between 2030 and 2050 is not a big issue. As I say, we're sticking, and we think it's a challenging date for us to of 2030. But we're minded, obviously, that I think Devon County is similar to Torquay, similar to government of 2050, but it's not an issue. I've forgotten your second question. What was the second question?
No problem at all. Through you, Mr. Chairman, if you're happy for me to repeat.
I'm happy to remind Mike. It was that we're a quarter of a way through the process, towards 2030, the target date that we've got. How far are we with achieving that quarter of the carbon reductions, Mike?
David's here. You can ask.
That's fine. So David, and also I think it's Emily Reid as well from Devon County. So if there's any flesh that you'd like to put on the bone, David, it'd be really helpful, as well as any reflections in supporting Mike with that.
Thanks, Steve. Yes, just to come back on Councillor Thomas's question, the only figures we've got are that there's been a 40% reduction. You might find that quite surprising, quite high reduction in Torquay's carbon emissions between 2008 and 2020. That's the most recent figures we have. Government figures come out every 2 years. It'll be another 2 years before we have these figures for this year. But that's quite a lot, and that sounds a lot because a lot of that is achieved by the production of more sustainable forms of energy nationally, not necessarily just in the Bay. So that has had quite a significant impact already. And as Mike's pointed out several times, it's our aspiration to work harder, to work more quickly, to try and get some of these measures in place. And that's why we believe we can go with the 2030 compared to the 2050 across Devon and nationally. But it will be hugely challenging, as Councillor Thomas has pointed out. But on Friday, in our Torquay Climate Partnership, which is with all the other partners across the Bay, we are launching this week our consultation, which will be open to all members of the public and to others to comment upon the actions included within there. And that's effectively the Torquay Climate Emergency Action Plan. And we would welcome all comments, but for the next 6-8 weeks or so that consultation will be out. And that sets out some measures for the next 2 years, which we believe, as a partnership, not as the council, but as a partnership, need to be achieved across the Bay. And I hear some of the comments that were made earlier on. Those do address things like EV chargers, energy efficiency of our homes to make them more energy efficient, and to electrify our transport system as well, to try and improve upon our emissions from buses as well. So there's lots of work to do. We still are, it's an ambitious target, but we are trying to work towards that 2030 target. Emily Reid from the Devon Climate Emergency Group is here, but I believe she stated on Friday that she doesn't see a conflict between our own plans for 2030 and theirs at 2050, or indeed the climate emergency plan that we're going out to consultation on now does not see that there's a conflict between the Devon carbon plan that's already produced. So from our point of view, we are working together, and both my Climate Emergency Officer, Jackie Warren, and myself have been involved with the Devon climate work and believe that it's fruitful, productive work that's going on. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And does Emily Reid, do you have any reflections before we move on to any further questions from colleagues?
Thank you. I'd only add that whilst the target is 2050 at the latest for the Devon-wide plan, the plan is very clear that the partnership wishes to work with national government to bring forward their ambitions, bring forward the date, and that as a partnership and as Devon as a whole, we're ready to deliver action faster if we're enabled by national government with the legislation and the support that we need to do so.
Right, thank you. So, do we have any further questions from around the table or elsewhere in the room from elected members?
Nobody's indicated, Chair.
Okay, it's Mike, do you have any further reflections?
No further.
Right.
Sorry,
okay.
no further apart from to reiterate what David said. The Torquay Climate Emergency Action Plan is not a council-led action plan. It is a community-led action plan, which was finalised at Paynton Zoo on Friday.
So it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So that concludes that item. We now move on to communications. If people don't wish to stay for the rest of the meeting, they're very welcome to leave now. Otherwise, we'll be moving on to Sarah Pengelly, who'll be doing a presentation about the HAF project. Is Sarah here, Lisa? Ready to? Right. Okay. We'll just get Sarah then. Thank you. Pardon? Please, can we have quiet so that we can continue with the meeting, because we're keen to hear this presentation on the HAF project supporting young people in Torquay. Can we, I'm sorry, can we, right, sorry, I'm going to ask for people to be ejected from the room, because I'm not prepared to have this disrespect for those who are trying to support young people in Torquay. So we will adjourn and people will be removed from the room now. Apologies. So, thank you, colleagues. And Sarah, I'm sure you're very disappointed that the crowd cleared for you, because I'm sure I thought they were all here to see you and the outstanding presentation that I know that you're capable of this evening. So over to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening all. I'm here to just give a quick 5-minute overview of our free school meals, holiday activities and food programme plan for this winter period. Just briefly to give people a quick overview of what the HAF programme is. So the HAF programme is known as Healthy Holidays in Torquay. It is funded by the Department for Education. We're in the second year of delivering the HAF programme in Torquay. And obviously over quite a challenging time with COVID, it's been difficult to kind of understand what our norm is, but we're certainly working towards normalising our plan around it, our approach. So just to ensure that people are aware, it is for children and young people who are free school meals eligible, who are primary and secondary aged, and also in Torquay we've made the decision to open it up also to electively home educated children, to ensure they have access to holiday clubs, socialising and also hot food. So each holiday club runs for a minimum of 4 days per week for 4 hours a time, and every child will receive a hot meal, a minimum of 1 hour's physical exercise, an enrichment activity, and also opportunities to learn new things, spend time with other children and young people, and hopefully have fun in the process. Our approach is we have a group of fabulous voluntary and community sector and private partners locally who provide this on Torquay Council's behalf, and we have a steering group that oversees all of that, who are made up of lots of different partners, both from local authority and also from community. We ensure that there's a good mix, or try to ensure there's a good mix of venues, so both school-based and also community-based, and that there's a wide range of activities available for children and young people. So we have a mixture of activities, some sports-based. Obviously we're prime placed in Torquay to have beach-based activities, obviously when it's not this weather, so in summer it is fabulous. Lots of activities around nature walks, silent discos, which we could do with here. Shall we keep going? Yeah, okay. Cycling and bike maintenance, drama, music production, lots of different activities for young people. As I said, we're in year 2, so we're towards the end of year 2 of our delivery locally. To date, we've delivered 78 different holiday clubs. We've funded 3,240 individual placements for children and young people, but our total reach has been over 7,000 over the 2-year period, and obviously we're hoping to continue with that. So for our offer for Christmas is that we currently have 12. We're looking at a potential add-on, so 13 holiday clubs across the bay. So at the moment there's 5 in Torquay, 5 in Paignton, 2 in Brixham. The available spaces is 516. We're looking to reach around 900 to 1,000 children in total, because not all children will attend for the full 4 days that are available. We've had some additional funding from DFE, so we've been able to expand on the number of places that we originally had planned. We're looking at additional training for providers, and also looking at developing our comms around what's available for people, so developing some promotion videos to capture some of the great work that's happening. We're well aware of the current cost of living crisis and how that might be impacting on families, so we're expanding on the basic offer for a lot of our holiday clubs. So some have additional hampers and activity packs that are being issued to children to take away with them to home. Some will receive additional presents that are being donated by the community. And we have done lots of work with the providers around signposting for families around accessing different support that they may need. We've also looked at other free resources to be able to share with families Myself and a colleague from the early years team will be undertaking quality assurance visits, and other colleagues within the virtual school extension project will also be out visiting the clubs. And obviously the offer is open to yourselves to come and visit any of the clubs should you wish to. The information is available on the link that's attached to this, but hopefully that will all be shared with you. That outlines each of the projects, the date that they're delivering, the times of delivery, and how to book children and young people onto the projects there. There are still spaces available. A quick list of the different places that are operating is there, but as I say, it's all online. And if anyone has any questions at all, then I'm around. Thank you.
Thank you for that very good presentation. And I know I attended Upton St James, where they were doing zorbing, which sadly was very little to do with the Greek I thought it would do with, but actually it was these blow-up suits that you ran at each other and tried to knock each other on the floor with. It seemed enormous fun. Yes, less comments about Councillor Morey. So any questions from around the table?
Nobody's indicated,
Or
Chair.
any other elected members in the room? Any questions for Sarah?
Nobody's indicated.
Okay, so thank you, Sarah, for sharing with us.
Not at all, thank you.
That's really kind, and hope you have a good Christmas. And colleagues, we will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the sufficiency plan for Cordelia. It's you anyway, isn't it? Do you want to present?
So this is our early years sufficient, it's our childcare sufficiency, I'll get it right in a minute, which is a very full and detailed report that we're required to put forward annually on local arrangements and to ensure that there's sufficient childcare places for children aged 0 to 14 and up to 18 years of age for children with special educational needs and disabilities who have parents that are working, studying or training for employment. The report shows that we do have sufficient early years placements and also sufficient wraparound care available for our school children. The report does, however, highlight that some parents continue to have difficulties accessing holiday childcare when they need it, particularly for parents of children with special educational needs and disabilities. And although we do have sufficient childcare places at the moment, we do need to keep an eye on our falling birth rate and the impact this may have on future sufficiency. The other thing to note is that 84% of all our early years settings are rated good or outstanding by Ofsted, and 11% are awaiting their first graded Ofsted rating. This means that our children are getting a good start to life, which is so important. And the last thing I'd like to draw your attention to is that this year, in response to feedback that we received on the report last year, we've added a section to it on the use of grandparents and friends, informal childcare arrangements. Thank you. I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Councillor Long, I understand you may wish to second.
For the purposes of this, I am Councillor Stockman, who couldn't make it, but I'm happy to second. As I understand, this is going out to consultation, so just to help facilitate that. Thank you.
Right, so as it's going out to consultation... Sorry?
Sorry, Chair, it's already been out for consultation. You are just approving it.
Right, there we are. Done your homework, Councillor Long. All right, so any questions from around the table?
Nobody's indicated from your table, Chair, but Councillor Bye has.
Yeah, so I'll just shoot one off myself first of all. As far as how have we ensured that we've heard the voice of the child through this process? Councillor Law. How have we ensured that we hear the voice of the child through this process?
I'll pass over to Rachel for this one.
Yes, certainly. So we've included in this report direct feedback from families. So families were engaged, Steve, Councillor Darling, in this process. We conducted a survey of parents and for under 5 children, obviously the parents did feed back that quality information to us in this response. We have updated our report and the findings of our report based on that direct consultation we did with families. For the children and young people attending holiday provision, we also included some of the voice of the young people through the HAF programme as well, and we've made sure that our schools also fed back through the young people some of the holiday feedback that they provide through the maintained sector as well. So the report is reflective of young people's feedback as well.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bai.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I say, I got so excited tonight. It's all gone wrong. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. It's a very positive report, and we did consider this at overview and scrutiny. That was the big thing I wanted to say to you. So there's been overview and scrutiny, and members were impressed by the level of provision. I think we've made a recommendation looking through the minutes that there's some note on smoking rates, pregnant mums in Torquay, and that they appear to be quite high, and we wanted to have the national context. And I think there was another minor point about the drafting, but that's come in the minutes and recommendations from overview and scrutiny. What I would like to say is members read this report. There's an awful lot of really interesting information broken down into our wards in terms of deprivation, in terms of birth rates. These are the latest figures with regard to deprivation. There are 3 wards, Tormowen, Ellicombe and Roundham with Hyde, where it's judged that 80% or thereabouts of residents live in deprivation, which are quite extraordinary high figures. And in contrast, Goodrington and Roseland, as well as Churston and Gampton, no residents are judged to live in deprivation. So I think huge inequality. My own ward in Wellswood is something like 31% of residents are considered to be within the 20% most deprived in England. So even an area that we consider is quite affluent, way above what you would expect. The other thing which just touched on with Rachel's comments about the reduction in the birth rate, significant reduction in the birth rate in Torquay in particular, but in Brixham it has collapsed. So you are looking last year at just 88 births in Brixham in a town of a population of 17,500. That is an extraordinary low figure, and I think that follows on from the debates and discussions we've had about the economic regeneration strategy and the need for growth. So if you have a town of that size with just 88 births, down from about 140, 150, which in turn was down from about 200 not many years ago, that paints a picture. So there's some really interesting statistics to go through in this report, and it tells us a lot about Torquay, as well as comfort in terms of the provision for early years for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bai. So I know Rachel has indicated she's happy to address some of the issue. Councillor Law, do you have any reflections? You're happy to go to Rachel?
Yeah, I'm happy to go to Rachel. The recommendations of the overview and scrutiny board are appended to this report in our packs as well, and it was actually also the rates on vaping that you wanted to know, which I don't know if we actually collect, but I'll go over to Rachel for that one.
Okay. So we have updated the report with the overview and scrutiny recommendation of including the national averages of women smoking during pregnancy. So that's included in the document that's before you today. We've been working with our public health colleagues to understand if statistics around women vaping during pregnancy are nationally collected and understood. So we've taken that as an action to look to include that in next year's annual report if that data is available. So we've adopted both of the overview and scrutiny report recommendations.
Nobody else has indicated, Chair.
It's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you for that, and thank you, Rachel. Colleagues, we now move into the corporate parenting strategy. Cordelia, do you want to unpack this for us?
Thank you. Yes, so each and every councillor, member of staff at Torquay Council are corporate parents to 296 cared for children, 11 unaccompanied minors and over 160 care experienced young people. So you may remember that when we put in place our interim corporate parenting strategy last year, we also voted for it to become a policy framework document to reflect how important our corporate parenting responsibilities are to us and how seriously we take those responsibilities. This strategy before you today replaces the interim strategy which was put in place in June 2021, and as a policy framework document it now needs to go out to public consultation, and this is what's before you today to approve to go out to consultation. The primary purpose of this update is to ensure that this is a co-produced strategy that was co-produced with our cared for and care experienced young people, and they really are at the heart of this document. Hopefully you'll get a sense of this from the quotes and the statements within it from our children and young people. They're interwoven throughout. So the strategy outlines a legislative framework for our corporate parenting responsibilities, highlights the duty on all officers, members and partners as corporate parents, and also our agreed priorities and associated pledges to our children and young people. It outlines the governance structure, details on how we embed a culture of participation and consultation with our young people and with our fostering families, and it outlines our plans to introduce a children and young people's panel from January 2023. So as I've said before, this is before you today to approve to go out to consultation, and though we've sought the views of a wide range of children, young people, parents and carers in putting the strategy together, we look forward to further reflections on it and incorporating those from the consultation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cowell, I understand you may wish to second.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second this, and as Councillor Law has highlighted, this is going out for consultation, but I think the thread through it does actually really illustrate our collective responsibility and priority that the partnership and indeed the council as a whole, including its staff, attribute to corporate parenting. So I think it's great that the strategy has already been so widely engaged with those different organisations and of course children in particular. That is probably the most important element of it. And of course, as Councillor Law also said, it's a case of hearing a wider voice perhaps as we go out to consultation over the next few weeks, and look forward to seeing the final product. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. We've got Becky Thompson with us. Do you have any reflections, Becky, before we move into debate?
Thank you, Chair. Just to second that, really, I think the significance of a child becoming cared for and then being care experienced really cannot be underestimated. So this strategy absolutely reflects our partnership and corporate commitment to those children and young people, and what we can all do to be the best possible corporate parent that we can be. And as Councillor Law already indicated, we're really looking forward to the feedback in terms of further consultation and reflecting that in the final strategy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I think colleagues are right to look forward to the challenge, because we can never be doing enough for our young people, and we must always challenge ourselves on this, because we just always need to have the mindset that if it were my child, what would we be doing, rather than what the situation that we may have had in the past with young people who were under the care of the local authority or were care experienced. So do we have any hands raised from around the table, Lisa?
Nobody's indicated. Chair.
And then any hands from colleagues elsewhere in the room?
Councillor Bye.
Councillor Bye, do come in.
Thank you so much again, Mr. Chairman. And absolutely, corporate parenting was recognised as a strength in the Ofsted report earlier in the year. And my contribution this evening is absolutely to confirm that it is cross-party. We absolutely all work together on this important area of the Council's business. I would say perhaps our greatest responsibility, our greatest legal responsibility, is the proper care of those children who are within the care of the Council. So this refresh of the already enhanced corporate parenting strategy is to better hear the voice of the child. So let's wish it well, and come back soon. And when they thought so highly of us before Ofsted with regard to our efforts for corporate parity, we'll have a new strategy, and goodness me, they'll think even higher of us. So isn't that good? Very, very positive. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So there are no other hands raised, so therefore we'll go to, unless Cordelia, do you have any reflections? Are we happy if we go to the vote?
I think after the excitement this evening, I'm happy to go to the vote.
Okay, so all those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So colleagues, and can I remind colleagues that there are exempt elements of this report. I'm very happy to go into part 2 if we need to go into part 2, but be somewhat guarded in respect of the Parkfield lease report. So it's the leasehold disposal of Parkfield. Councillor Long, do you want to start to share this with colleagues?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman, and it seems slightly weird without the singing in the background now, but perhaps we should have that all the time. Parkfield overlaps a number of Cabinet portfolios, and Cabinet colleagues will remember my delight when this item landed in my lap probably a year or so ago, but I'm pleased that there appears to be a positive outcome that's in our grasp. The Council decided that it no longer needs to use the Parkfield building to operate services from. As a consequence, the Council and the taxpayer will be left with the upkeep of an empty building. Colleagues will also recall that heady day earlier this year when the Asset Management Strategy 2022 to 2027 was agreed. One of the principles of that strategy is to work collaboratively and promote joint working with the voluntary community and faith sector organisations to identify approaches to benefit the community. So I'm delighted that we're able to put that strategy into practice on this item. Procurement process has been undertaken to identify a community partner or partners to whom the house and grounds can be disposed of on a leasehold basis. And I think it'd be worth my paying tribute at this point to Becky Morgan for herding all the cats on that particular project board. The process was open to any partners in the voluntary, community and social enterprise sector to bid for. Bids were received and the top scoring bidder has become the preferred bidder. Unfortunately, we can't name them today because of the rules surrounding the procurement process, unless I guess if we go into part 2. However, I can say that I'm excited by the preferred bidders community and collaborative based approach. It is worth pointing out the positive socio-economic and public health impacts indicated in the equality impacts in this report. Formal agreement is required from the Big Lottery Fund and the National Trust, but no negative response has been indicated from them thus far. So I would like to propose at this point the recommendation item 3, please, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cowell, I understand you may wish to second.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second, and I think we all know that the issue of Parkfield is one that we've been grappling with for several years, and the opportunity to actually do something a bit different in terms of working collaboratively with partners to deliver on the outcomes that were included in the procurement process, but particularly with a focus on young people. It seems to be a theme of tonight's meeting. Parkfield was very much a part of the MySpace funding, which actually delivered new Parkfield, which is now occupied by the Medical Tuition Service. But it does provide the opportunity to have a significant bottom-up approach, working with those individual or organisations to provide the outcomes that we desire for young people, and indeed intergenerational. And it's not just about Parkfield, it's about what Parkfield can do for the wider bay as well. And I think that's the bit that really excites me, and that reignites the original vision of the MySpace project all those years ago. So I'm looking forward to being able to see the publication of the successful bidder after the due process, and excited about the future of the centre. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Kevin, do you have any reflections, or has everything been exposed that needs to be?
Chair, I just wanted to add one, just make some clarity on a couple of points. So there are existing users on the site that don't have a formal lease agreement with the authority, and that we would need to speak with the preferred bidder about how that relationship went forward, and we were comforted on the project board about how that approach might be made. But there is also, as Councillor Cowles referred to, the Medical Tuition School or Torquay Education Limited. This proposal will impact in terms of there'll be neighbours, but the actual lease arrangement with the school remains, and they will be effectively coexisting on the same site. So that's the only other bit that I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. And just remind colleagues that there are elements that are, should be held in private, part 2. So if there are any of those, do any elements that we need to unpick and explore this evening, do make sure that you request that we go into part 2 first. Do we have any hands from around the table, Lisa, of Cabinet members?
Councillor Carter.
Do you come in, Chris?
Thank you. So it's good that something's happening with Parkfield, with the house now, but how sustainable is this for the future of the Parkfield house itself? And is there a plan B if anything goes wrong?
Councillor Long.
I'll say something, and then perhaps if Kevin wants to, sorry, Mr. Moat wants to come in, then we can do. I would say that the project board was incredibly thorough and challenging, and that was perhaps can be evidenced in the scoring that can be seen in the paperwork. I would say that seeing particularly the Director of Adults in full swing when she was in challenging mode on the project board was something to behold. So I think it's been an absolutely thorough process, and we've got the best outcome that can be. And I think there will be a positive for the house itself. I know that Swissco are going to be involved in the grounds maintenance, I believe, and I think, if I can speak frankly, I would rather go through this process and give the voluntary and community service a chance, and it is involving a lot of community groups, so I think it does stand a good chance, but I don't know whether, Kevin, you wanted to say anything?
To answer your question, Councillor Carter, there is no formal plan B. I think if this proposal does not work successfully, we'll need to work with Cabinet colleagues and sort of revisit the options. But I think the proposal that came forward was viable. It was, as Councillor Long has said, it was scrutinised significantly, it was challenged comprehensively. The Section 151 officer also asked for further financial information, which was actually one of the reasons why it was delayed a month before it came this evening. So I think it's had the relevant level of due diligence, and I think as a landlord I would expect the council to be supportive as possible with the preferred bidder to try and make it work. One of the things that was attractive about the bid was numerous references to bidding for external funding, and several of those related to the fabric of the building. And as you know, Councillor Carter, we have a number of buildings that are both listed and in need of some tender loving care, and not always the budget that goes with that. So that was an attractive option, and I think the fact that the preferred bidder is setting out a business case which allows income to come in, not just revenue income from use of the space, but also capital bids bringing in cash to help with the building. We need to give Plan A an opportunity to succeed, and then hopefully we won't need to discuss a Plan B. But to answer your question, there isn't one that I can show you.
Okay, thank you. Any other hands from within the room then, whether it's members around the table or elsewhere?
Councillor Chris Lewis and Councillor Bye.
Thank you. Councillor Bye, do you want to come in first? Councillor Bai, do you want to come in?
I think he, as I put my hand up first, he's sort of saying...
All right. I was calling Councillor Bai first because it's a children's focused thing and I was keen to hear from him first.
Okay, Councillor Bai.
I hope I won't get struck off Councillor Lewis's Christmas card list, but there we go.
I gave you one yesterday. You don't want another one, surely.
I have to give it to you back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'm keen to understand, please, in all good faith, is how can we ensure that this project delivers what I would call the spirit of the original bequest, which, as I understand it, was the donation of Parkfield House and the grounds to the council. It may have been Paynton Council all those years ago, as a children's home, and then in subsequent years it's not been as a children's home, but it's always been a children's place. It's been a children's facility. Many of us have attended foster care events there. It's been offices for children's services. Lots of meetings with children and their families have taken place there. So how can we ensure that we follow through the spirit of that bequest, and are we completely confident that the I can't think of the exact legal term, but the National Trust, who would have acquired the property had the council not followed through with a children's project there, how can we be assured that they are happy with this project?
Councillor Long.
Well, I think the National Trust do have to, and the Big Lottery Fund do have to give their formal approval of this, and there's not been any indication so far that they have disagreed, but that has still yet to come. I think with the community sort of ethos going through it, I still think that spirit lives on in this, but we'll get that formal sort of certification as part of this process.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Obviously, pleased that we have found a solution for, hopefully a solution for Parkfield House and the grounds. That's very welcome. It is a shame, I think, that local councillors weren't engaged in the process. We didn't have a place at the project board and we weren't consulted at all throughout the whole of the process by the local authority. My concerns are on page 394, 3.2, and it is in the document, where the survey reports 8,000 of essential work must be completed within 2 years, and a further 93,000 of desirable work required within 3 to 5 years. I think it is a heavy burden to put on to the community, the leaseholder, on day one, that they've got liability really of over £100,000 that could be spent on community work rather than the repairs. We did hear earlier that they would be putting in for grants, but the 8,000 is essential work to be done immediately. So I'd ask that maybe we could be helpful to them. Paynton, as you know, has got over 200,000 in the SIL money, and perhaps with David here as well, maybe we could look at softening that blow or underwriting any bid that they may have, because I think that would be helpful going forward. No one wants to go forward with a new project with 100,000 on the back of it. So that's my request, really, that we look at it as we have further dialogue with the future leaseholder. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis, and I think we just need to also reflect to ourselves of the real challenging times that we find ourselves as a local authority. If we compare our budget to 10 years ago, roughly speaking, it's £96 million less, and approximately £700 million taken out of the budget by central government cuts and budget pressures, Councillor Lewis, as I know you're only too aware, because we do remind you from time to time of it. And perhaps the local authority could be handing it on to the community in a better state if only it weren't for that austerity that many local authorities have faced at the hands of the Conservatives nationally. However, I do take heart from Kevin Mowatt's comments earlier on, that those who are putting their best foot forward have plans to draw in additional funding, so that meagre cash that's coming in from the SIL monies can be spread further, because it looks as if they've got some kahunas about them and will be trying to draw additional monies in from elsewhere into this outstanding, hopefully, project. So, any other hands, Lisa?
Nobody's indicated, Chair.
So, Councillor Long, anything to reflect on, or are you happy to go to the vote?
Just to say that I'm sure the council would take a collaborative approach as well as a kahunas approach, whatever that is, to this project, and work with the community groups on this, on any works outstanding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it's been proposed and seconded. Please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so colleagues, we now move on to planning contributions and supplementary planning policy. Anne-Marie, I understand there was some correspondence that came into a number of our inboxes this afternoon. Would you be kind enough to share your thoughts on this before we before we start this item?
Of course, Chairman. So, members, correspondence has been received this afternoon from lawyers instructed on behalf of Devon and Cornwall Constabulary in relation to the supplementary planning document. Their request is that the SPD is expanded to include contributions towards policing matters. Whilst there have been discussions between colleagues within Devon and Cornwall Police and planning colleagues, it wasn't raised more formally till this afternoon. However, we have had the opportunity of taking the monitoring officer's advice. She's not able to be with us this evening, but she has confirmed her advice to us this afternoon. And I can confirm she's reviewed the position. And as is set out in the report, indeed, I believe it's at paragraph 2.10, but I will just double check that, Chairman. The report sets out that the supplementary planning document has to be in accordance with the local plan. The local plan is policy framework, and therefore the supplementary planning document can't go beyond the local plan itself. What is requested by the police would indeed take this beyond the local plan remit in terms of that tiered approach. So therefore the advice very clearly from the monitoring officer is that you can continue to deal with this matter tonight. The request was that we adjourn it for further consideration, but the monitoring officer is clear that we can proceed. However, David, with his colleagues within planning, will continue their dialogue with the police, will continue in terms of looking at those developments and what's possible, but importantly in terms of the local plan review, that's where anything substantive would need to come forward. David, have I missed anything in that respect?
No, that's very clear, Anne-Marie. The paragraph was 2.10 in the report, and then also on page 77, the response to the Devon and Cornwall Police comments on the consultation are included as well. We will continue to work collaboratively. Other authorities are doing the same as well. And there are some circumstances where we could take a contribution if the police prove that there is a particularly high need in a particular patch. But we do that on a case-by-case basis. And yes, we will continue to talk with them, but not a roof tax on all development for all policing matters. We can't agree to that. It's one pie, and we've got to split it the way in which you as an authority agree. And one of our key priorities is the affordable housing. So, thanks.
But fundamentally, David, it's because it's not in accordance with the local plan. Members, it's not open to you this evening to take that.
Thank you. I think it would be an ultra-virus or something like that. So, Mike, would you like to open this item from elected members? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. More than happy to. And I thank David, or should I say Rocky Edmondson, for that comment. This report seeks Cabinet's approval of an updated planning contribution and affordable housing supplementary planning document, known as the SPD. This updated version of the SPD will replace the existing version which was adopted in 2017. The SDP sets out how Section 106 planning obligations are to be used in Torquay to meet the infrastructure needs created by developments, including providing affordable housing. The SPD provides guidance on, amongst other things, the kind of planning obligations sought, the circumstances in which they are to be sought, how financial contributions are calculated, and the relevant local plan and neighbourhood plans policies which provide the basis for seeking planning obligations. The SPD do not make new planning policy, rather than they provide more detailed advice and guidance on the implementation of existing policies in the local plan and neighbourhood plans. Changes to the planning policy need to be made through the ongoing Torquay local plan update. And the main purpose of this update is to ensure that the planning obligations adequately cover the costs of infrastructure at 2022 prices, which rose by 25.6% between 2017 and May 2020. Chairman, I so move the recommendations printed on pages 678 and 679.
Thank you. Councillor Long, I understand you may wish to second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm absolutely delighted to do so. After all, planning doesn't have enough plans or documents to influence its decisions, so happy to do so. The previous iteration of this document was adopted in 2017. One of the big changes nationally since then is that the government, via the National Planning Policy Framework, has increased the emphasis on affordable homes for sale. Of course, that does not reflect Torquay's situation where the main need is for homes for rent. And I'm pleased to see that this SPD and not SDP, as Councillor Murray tried to say, seeks to maintain this stance of needing more rented as much as possible within the requirements of the National Planning Policy Framework. So I was very pleased to see that. So more than happy to second, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. David Edmondson, do you have any reflections?
No, thank you, Chairman. I was going to come in and just point out the NPPF changes in 2021, but Councillor Long is very up to speed with all planning legislation, and so was able to do.
Thank you. Any indications from around the table? Any colleagues want it? Councillor Cowell, do come in.
Thank you, Chair. And clearly, Section 106 and developer contributions are such an important part of the development world, and it's a bit uncertain at the moment because we're not sure what the government are going to do with developer contributions moving forward in terms of Section 106 or indeed perhaps SIL. And for those viewing who don't know what SIL is, that is the Community Infrastructure Levy, which is 25% of which is actually available to our communities to allocate to projects that they would want to prioritise. So in our case that would be Torquay Neighbourhood Forum and currently Paynton Neighbourhood Forum along with Brixham Town Council. That will change next year, no doubt, following resubmission of those neighbourhood plans, but it's also another example of why neighbourhood plans are so important, because it means that they you can get your hands on some real cash to deliver some projects, and Councillor Lewis alluded to earlier that Paynton's got some £200,000 in SIL, just waiting to be spent. And I think the prioritisation over delivery of affordable housing is so important at Torquay when we're facing the housing crisis that we are, and the need to deliver social housing in particular, something that we will be doing in partnership obviously with Tor Vista and others. There is a worrying trend by partner agencies such as the police and health to start relying on Section 106 to fund infrastructure projects within their remit. And it's purely and simply because they're looking for every opportunity to get their hands on some cash because they're being starved of it by the government in the same way as we are. And I think it's a worrying direction of travel that we're using money that should be used on genuine local community projects and for the benefit of local communities through 106 or SIL, that we're having to prop up those vital partners that are so important within our communities as well. So I'm happy to support the recommendations tonight and look forward to seeing more Section 106 money getting out the door and being delivered on the projects that matter to our communities most. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cowell. Lisa, any hands around the table or elsewhere in the room, please?
Not round the table, but from Councillor Lewis.
Councillor Lewis, do come in.
Thank you very much indeed. If you can look at page 684, 2.8, which says Torquay places greater weight on Section 106 obligations from major developments, whereas our neighbours tend to have more comprehensive SIL regimes. This overall strategy needs to be reassessed to the context of the local plan and the government's proposed reform of developer contributions. However, in the interim, Section 106 obligations are negotiable with developers in a way that SIL is not. I think that's an interesting one because we get so many developers who say that it's not viable, therefore they get out of paying the Section 106 money. I'd like to ask the portfolio holder, or indeed David, why it is that other authorities go for the SIL as opposed to us going for the 106.
Thank you. So, Mike, do you have any reflection? You're happy to call a friend and go to David Evans. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, we talked briefly about this last week, and it is still that attempt to be able to secure a certain amount by going for Section 106 and often more. But still we have in place, and we do take a set amount, but a lot of that, as you know, is going directly to the South Devon Highway Works. And so it's better to be able to negotiate a more effective Section 106 agreement rather than necessarily just going for SIL. And it depends on the scale of the development and what size of scheme it is as to what we can achieve. But we will still adamantly and strongly defend the position about getting the right contributions for the right forms of development and not bow into those viability discussions, which of course you witnessed last evening at Planning Committee. So.
Thank you, and I think David Pickhaver is also keen to add to the debate. Please do come in, David.
Thank you very much. It's just a slight mea culpa, really, because the approach that Torquay took when we adopted SIL when we were doing SIL in 2016 and 2017 reflected advice at the time that it was better to rely on Section 106 obligations for major developments in major growth areas and then use SIL to hoover up, well, that's perhaps the wrong word, but to target smaller sites. And I think, in honesty, the approach we have in Torquay is probably somewhat complicated, and there is a scope to simplify it. But I'm afraid that has to come through the local plan update and through an update of the SIL charging schedule, or the infrastructure levy charging schedule as it might become, rather than being something that can be changed in the planning contributions SPD.
Thank you, David. Lisa, any other hands raised from around the room?
Nobody's indicated.
Okay, thank you. Mike, are you happy to go to the vote?
Happy to go.
Right, all those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, and as if it's been pre-arranged, we go on to Community Infrastructure Levy, Governance and Administration. So, Mike, do you want to unpack this item, please?
Yeah, more than happy, Chair. My legs can't sleep, the dog's sitting on my foot. The Council has implemented the Community Infrastructure Levy, the SIL as we know it, which generates funds from defined new developments which pay a set levy type contribution towards local infrastructure. The majority of the funds are already allocated to key infrastructure problems, which David mentioned about the South Devon Link Road. However, 25% of the levy funds form what is called the local and neighbourhood proportion. Quickly going back a bit, at its meeting on the 11th of August 2020, the Cabinet agreed that a standalone bidding process would be introduced to determine what local projects the SIL neighbourhood proportion should be spent on. The Cabinet established a SIL spend board, and its operation would be the responsibility of Torquay Council, but would include representatives of the neighbourhood forums, the community partnerships, local members, the Cabinet member for infrastructure and culture. During the course of the last year, bids have received from Torquay, as we remember, came up at the last Cabinet meeting, or the one before that, from the Torquay Community Partnership. They had been discussed, and we passed them with no problem. So the board, the old board had proved very cumbersome and overly complicated, resulting in a number of bids being undetermined. Therefore, the Cabinet, as the ultimate parent and decision maker in establishing the administration, had to rescind, as we did, that previous decision in this regard, and determine the bids that had been submitted, the order that they could be progressed. So the reason behind the recommendations is pretty clear. It's to help us deliver our ambition by seeing the neighbourhood proportion of the community infrastructure spent locally on well-prepared community projects. Chairman, I move the recommendation as appears on 799 of the report.
Thank you, and I'm happy to second, and I would reflect to colleagues that Torquay Neighbourhood Forum have been fairly active in progressing these. I think it's just important that we formalise this way forward, because it did end up, as Mike alluded to, coming up as an item at the last Cabinet. As Councillor Lewis alluded to earlier on, if there is money in the system, we should be getting it spent doing good for our communities rather than collecting. Mind you, interest rates have gone up thanks to Liz Truss in recent times. So collecting higher levels of interest than we may have anticipated due to the mini budget. We need to make sure that it is being put to good use because it is pointless just sat there. I hope this will be a mechanism where we can achieve that for our communities because especially with inflationary costs, the sooner it's put to good use, the better. So I'm seconding it. Lisa, do we have any hands from around the table? Councillor Cowell, I'll call you in first.
Thank you, Chair. And I declare my interest as Vice Chair of Torquay Neighbourhood Forum. And it's true to say that the forum were increasingly frustrated that applications were being submitted. And the process that happens in Torquay was that the community partnerships would identify projects and then they would go through the neighbourhood forum, because the neighbourhood forum in Torquay is that collective of the community partnerships in the town. And they were making the recommendations to go to the former panel, and they were just stuck in a process. So the revision that we hopefully will agree tonight will simplify that process. It will make sure that it regularises it. And mindful that there's not neighbourhood forums or active neighbourhood forums in all of the areas at the moment, then in the absence of a neighbourhood forum, then the decisions and process would be undertaken in consultation with the community partnerships or other community groups. So I think there's that fallback position, and of course the position with Brixton Town Council will remain unchanged. So we look forward to getting that money out to those meaningful projects, but in particular in Painston and Torquay, and indeed Broadsands, Churston and Gampton in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis, do come in.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, unfortunately, Paignton doesn't have a neighbourhood forum at the moment. As you know, Councillor Cowell has been involved in that. So it's how you get to the stage where you're actually giving a recommendation to that panel. That's what we're trying to do from Paignton, if you like. And that, as we know, like Torquay, Paignton is made up of a number of wards, a number of community partnerships. And I think the cabinet, or the informal cabinet, or somewhere, it has been discussed about setting a board up for covering the whole of Paignton, because we haven't got the neighbourhood forum. I would welcome that, where we, not member-led, but clearly with members who are elected by, 3,000 or 4,000 people, are heavily involved in that process, along with the community partnerships. So you could see that each ward of Paignton had a member representing and a member from the community partnership to keep the panel fairly small, and then the community partnerships can feed into that. Like a neighbourhood forum, but by another name where you may get greater involvement. But I think we need something to do it. Otherwise, if you leave it to the community partnerships, which in some cases are very small, you need an overriding, even at that early stage, that can coordinate all the information, then pass it up to the panel. So something that if you could look at, I mean, I'm talking off the cuff, but it is something that we could do quite quickly, I think, and probably should do it, because the chairman is quite right. With 200,000 sitting there, it's much better to use it than sit in the bank. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Darren, I think you have some reflections.
Yeah, I mean, Councillor Lewis is absolutely right. I mean, the Paignton Neighbourhood Forum, unfortunately, at the moment is dormant. It's not defunct because it's still recognised as a qualifying body, even though they need to be resubmitting those that qualification process imminently. I think we need to make a distinction between what is being proposed in terms of the Torquay Story Place Board that we're talking about for each of the towns, and what that looks like, and having a slick process that encourages those community partnerships to come together, perhaps through the community builders as well, because they are a constant as well as the ward members. But certainly I think working with the community partnership company, of which I'm no longer the chair, there's a mechanism to be established there. And I think one of the good things about actually saying to people, here's a big pot of money, how do you want to spend it? And by the way, as part of that, there's this process that we need to refresh the neighbourhood plan. We'll actually draw some other people into it. So I think it's a one-off opportunity to try and hook people into refreshing the Paignton neighbourhood plan. So I'm supportive.
Yeah. Councillor Dave Thomas.
Thanks very much. Mine is a similar issue, revolves around that Paignton Neighbourhood Forum that, as we know at the moment, is currently sleeping. But the proposed decision at section 2 basically, once it's approved tonight, talks about needing to be endorsed by the neighbourhood forums. There is nothing that comes after that that says if the neighbourhood forum isn't operating, then XYZ could take place. And that kind of gives me a little bit of concern, in as much as, because we haven't got the neighbourhood forum actually functioning at the moment in Paignton, and this is effectively a recommendation to try to unlock that £200,000, because the neighbourhood forum isn't there. I understand that, yes, this could be a great opportunity to engage people to make it happen, but if for some reason that neighbourhood forum doesn't get unlocked, there's nothing in this decision tonight that provides a secondary method, and I would just hope that maybe a secondary method could be kind of linked into the decision. You did kind of speak about it, but it's not written into the decision, and so obviously when we come back to it, all that we've got is the neighbourhood forum. I just want to make sure that Paignton can actually get to spend that £200,000 on some of the community projects that are certainly out there. Thank you.
So, Councillor, Mike Morey, do you want to reflect anything? And then David, I'm sure you can pick up any other pieces.
That was going to be my point, was there is an issue. There's no doubt an issue in Paignton. And God forbid, who knows what happens in the future. It may not be the only town without a neighbourhood forum. Who knows? So there must be some format, some mechanism to go through. I think we've touched briefly on it, David. Do you want to elaborate?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, through you. I thought, Councillor Thomas, that I'd put in a section in number 2 in recommendation 2. The panel is made up of, and we list the members, and I've said, and representatives of neighbourhood forums, brackets, or if not, in other words, if there isn't a neighbourhood forum, then representatives from the community, local community partnerships and the TCDT as a coordinator. And the intention is, and I was grateful at Shadow Cabinet for both of your sort of offer to help with this, is that we will use the forms that Torquay have been so active with using, replicate those for Paignton, and then through your assistance with the coordination of the community partnerships, be the kind of filter for then bouncing those matters up to this panel, which should be a checking through and just agreeing it if it's been supported already in the community.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think I was just slightly misunderstood. I do understand what you've said there. You just need to come back a sentence before where it talks about that given delegated authority to determine submissions from community groups in consultation with a newly established SIL spend panel which are endorsed by the neighbourhood forums. Now, my issue in Paignton is if we don't have a neighbourhood forum that is active to endorse it, therefore, and if nothing is put in as a subsequent of that not being available, any panel that you want to bring forward on the back of it still can't get an endorsement from the neighbourhood forum. Therefore, the decision, in my view, is lacking. So I don't have an issue with the bit that you're talking about subsequent, but it's that endorsement by the neighbourhood forum. I think it needs a set of words following it saying that if it's not available, with the greatest respect.
David, do you want to just reflect on that?
I'm sorry, Councillor Thomas, I realise which bit you're referring to. I think we could add an additional point after that, say, or an agreed alternative. In other words, this group that you're referring to made up straight after that recommendation. So in that first paragraph, which are endorsed by the neighbourhood forums or an agreed alternative method.
Thank you. So I know myself as seconder are happy to accept that officer suggestion. Mike, are you happy to?
More than happy to.
Yeah. Okay. So Lisa, any other hands from around the room?
Nobody's indicated,
Okay,
Chair.
so it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chair,
Okay.
as amended.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So, colleagues, we now move on to the last item of the agenda. It's 1:45 budget monitoring. This was fully debated at overview and scrutiny last week with no amendments coming forward. So, Councillor Cowell, would you be kind enough to update, and then we'll move to closing the meeting without any further debate.
Thank you, Chair. I think we did go through it at some length at overview and scrutiny, and there were no further recommendations from that. I think just we've got to be constantly aware of the immense budget pressures that, like all local authorities, we're facing in year, and have the reassurance that between the Chief Executive, the Section 215 officer, 151 officer, and senior leadership members, there is absolute scrutiny on the in-year pressures to ensure that we deliver a balanced budget at the end of Q4. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Darren. That concludes our meeting. Thank everybody for your time. Thank you.